We have Jason Diniz, President, Eagle Copters. He'll be speaking about one-stop shop value-added solutions, profitability, and longevity when it comes to helicopter operators globally. Jason Diniz.
Good morning to you all, Your Highness, Your Excellencies, and to everyone who's traveled from around the world to be here today. I have a special invite for His Excellency Major General to Canada. Those days were a long time ago when it took days. It's probably hours these days. And we'll come and pick you up in our X-76 and fly you around. So big thank you, first of all, to the team behind the scenes. It's the first time we've been here at the Dubai HeliConference, and it's the first time we've had the chance to engage with the teams. Akhil has been fantastic. He's worked with our teams. Ayman, thank you for reaching us out in Atlanta at HAI. It's been a pleasure to actually talk to you since. And to everybody else who's worked in the last few months to make it possible. It's good to be back in Dubai. I myself spent a lot of my childhood in Muscat, Oman. I've been around the Middle East. I love the culture, and in a way, it feels like home. And we at Eagle Copters are honored and humbled to be at this event. We're based in Canada, so it's good to get away from the cold every now and then. So I want to start with a key caveat first and foremost. The goal for MRO facilities and centralized comprehensive MRO facilities is not to replace the OEM. I want to make that very clear. We are highly embedded and partnered with multiple OEMs around the world. The goal is actually to augment and enhance the value of the OEM installed base in the market. And while we do that, we allow our OEMs to focus their resources, their finances, their technologies on innovation, which is really critical in what we're looking at to the future. At Eagle Copters, we are a Bell certified facility, a Leonardo certified facility, a Sikorsky certified facility, and we do a lot of work for Airbus. So we represent the best of the best in terms of the OEMs when it comes to the commercial market. Strategically, what we have learned in the last 48 years is we do not operate. And we do that purposefully, because if we operate, there is a conflict of interest. And we want to give our customers every level of confidence that we are not going to move information between one customer to another. Also, the key thing about what we've learned in the last few years, and I want to certainly share that with you in time, is a one-stop shop perspective. Now, if you have an aircraft that's Bell or Airbus or Leonardo, and if you want to do a combination of mission changes, STC issuances, moving the STC from one part of the world to another, imagine being a customer doing that with multiple different suppliers. It's quite cumbersome and it's complicated. You want an entity that can do it all for you. You get your aircraft to the facility, you tell them what they want, what you want, and you get a turnkey project in a time frame that is highly competitive. That is the key and the essence of what I'll be presenting to you all today. I want to take you through a couple of slides before I talk about the concepts of what I'll present, just because I want you, the audience, to have a level of confidence in what we have tried to do in the last 48 years around the world. We're a family-owned company. We started with humble beginnings. We were the first entity to come up with the concept of leasing helicopters in 1975. We've been self-funded since 1975. We have grown since then, and we have taken it from one aircraft to close to 80 aircraft plus multiple different capabilities. We're an approved maintenance organization for helicopters. We represent all the major commercial manufacturers today. We are into global leasing. We have 70 to 80 helicopters flying in about 15 to 18 countries, and that sometimes fluctuates. The difference with leasing is we don't only just lease an aircraft. We provide a full PBH component, tech records, camo support, it's a one-stop shop. And that, again, is going to be along the themes of what we present. Certifications are critical, because without certifications, if you're going to an MRO facility that doesn't have that capability, it's going to be a problem. You lose valuation, you lose time, and it costs a lot more money as they outsource their costs. So in short, you want to have a bit of a concept where it's a global presence, and they can do a lot more than just one or two elements. The concept of global reach is critical, and I say that because I was born in India, I grew up in the Middle East, I studied in the US, and now I am in Canada. What I'm trying to get here is we are a global society. If you have an entity coming to you trying to make you work within their framework, it's wrong. We have to adapt. We have to understand cultures. We have to understand the environmental challenges. We have to understand the complexities of doing business in a global world. But once you understand that, it becomes very easy. You can take the best from every part of the world, and you can leverage all of that to create a solution that is truly out of the box. So now I'll get to my concept of one-stop shop. You have the OEMs on the left side of the equation. You have the operators on the right side of the equation. And you have all of that right in the middle. I don't believe there's too many entities in the world that do that today. I think there's a need in the Middle East. I think there's a need in Southeast Asia. I think there's a need in the Far East too. In the US, you have quite a bit of that, but they specialize in different OEM segments. In Canada, we're the only entity that does that. But I truly believe by coming with this concept in Africa, India, and Southeast Asia, which in my view is the true growth market in the world. The other parts of Europe, North America, which we do a lot of work in, you have fleets that are retiring and fleets that will be supplemented. So your net new growth is not significant. But you look at Africa, you look at India, you look at the Middle East, the net new growth is absolutely significant. And I don't believe we have the MRO capacity today to support that growth. What are the challenges we face today? I'm sure you all in the audience know all of this. Supply chain. Post-COVID, it's been traumatic. Our OEMs are doing their very best, but you can't just switch on supply chain. It takes time. Lack of global MRO capacity. Interest rate hikes. This truly market capital constraints. I believe you all are blessed in the Middle East not to have that much of an impact, but in other parts of the world, it's really causing an issue. Technical skill. There's a lot of people retiring out of the industry. There's not enough of younger generation coming through the technical colleges. We're seeing that loud and clear. Demand versus supply. Right now, if you want an aircraft, you're waiting for months, if not years. If you want to use the aircraft, you're also waiting for months. We've never seen this in the history of helicopters in the last 20 years. High inflation, decreased consumer spending, extended lead times of aircraft, as I mentioned, and finally, a lack of economical logistics situations. We need supply chain. We need logistics to help support the industry we're in. All of this really causes a lot of constraints, and these are just some of the many challenges we face. So what do we do about it? First, I've got a bunch of data that I'll show to you in a very concise manner. We have to truly understand our cost of operations. It's all about the cost of operations. New aircraft acquisition. You've got a combination of getting the aircraft and getting it on time, because a lot of times when operators don't get their aircraft in time, they're paying liquidated damages and or they're losing opportunity. You're losing the chance to make the money you need to make. Variable cost. We plug that in our models. I'm sure as operators you have your own models to do that. And then fixed cost. Now the question is, what are your different levers to pull to absolutely make you profitable? And here's what I'm going to show you next. We've analyzed the data in a few segments. Light 1 and Light 2, basically based on payload capacity. Intermediate segments and mediums. There's a lot of the intermediate, I'd say Light 2, intermediate, mediums, and super mediums operating in your region right now. Take a look at this graph. This is an analysis of an average aircraft flying over a period of 5 years. So you're talking about your cost of new acquisition, your annual variable cost extrapolated over 5 years with the inflation value of 3.5% year over year, and then your fixed cost. It's significant. If you add the concept of fixed cost, that to me is really going to show the efficiency of the operator. They manage their fixed costs in the best possible manner. But over 74% of that cost, quite frankly, is not directly tied to the operator. That's a big number. That is the number that you need to put on to your suppliers. That is the number you need to put onto your MRO facilities. They need to help support your operations. Let's look at the 10-year scenario. In your 10-year scenario, your acquisition costs obviously go down as a percentage, but now your variable and your fixed costs even go higher. So again, that percentage of 65% over 10 years is absolutely significant. So what are your options here? I would say lead times right now are something that's affecting all of us. We know that. Perhaps you can go with an aircraft that is potentially a few years old, 3 to 5 to 7 years. Look, helicopters are not like fixed-wing aircraft. They're not pressurized craft. You're not going above 7,000 to 10,000 feet on average. You don't have the dynamic forces coming on your airframe that results in you retiring the aircraft after 25 to 30 years. You could fly a helicopter for infinity. If your airframe meets specs, your components are where they need to be, you can fly that aircraft for a long, long time. So if you're talking about an aircraft that's 3 to 5 years old, today, you can get it basically compared to new, it's about 20 to 30% off the price of new. It's significant. The other piece is it will help reduce your lead times and will reduce your liquidated damages too. We can also, a one-stop shop OEM facility or MRO facility can also support you in terms of trade-in aircraft. There's a lot of trade-in aircraft out there that are 5 to 7 and 10 years old. Utilize that. You can rebuild that aircraft to look like new, to function like new, to operate like new at a third of the cost. Why not do it? The next option is leasing. At the end of the day, when it comes to leasing, what you need to know is you don't have cash constraints as if you were going to buy an aircraft. It will open up your cash flow. It will allow you to move that money into other areas of operations, which is what you need to do with a lot of times as an operator. Don't restrict yourself just by acquiring aircraft. I know the concept of asset ownership is important. Me growing up in India, that's how we worked in business. You own the asset, that's what you were basically worth. But the reality is, can you use the concept of leasing to make money? And the answer is absolutely you can. Lead times and completions. This is very critical. Our position is we want to support OEMs in producing aircraft and getting them out to the market as soon as possible. If you are an operator and you want 1 to 3 to 5 aircraft, can you imagine the resource pool from the OEMs to do specialized configurations? It's significant. They're specialized at production line support, but now you move that support elsewhere and it delays them. It costs you more because you're paying the higher cost basis of OEMs, and at the end of the day, your lead times are no better. So what do you do then? You go to a facility that has the ability to do that. Today, all 11 aircraft flying with Falcon Aviation on the 412 EPs were done at Eagle's facility in Canada 10 years ago. Most of you don't know that, but we did those completions from a green ship to a fully installed aircraft delivered to Falcon here in Dubai and Abu Dhabi. We can do it. Most of us, non-OEM, can do it at a much cheaper cost basis. We don't have the heavy cost structures the OEMs do, and they rightfully do that because they are innovative, they are taking on those risks. So the cost structures can be significantly reduced. 10 to 15% on an acquisition price is quite a lot, and it adds up pretty fast. And you want to have a facility in your region that has the ability to issue STCs. Very, very critical. Every time you make a change in an aircraft that is not part of the normal type certificate, there's design, validation, certification, and if you're doing it in another part of the world, you have to get that STC transferred through what we call as bilaterals. Completely possible, cheap, faster compared to the OEMs. Now let's look at your variable cost. Here's a representation in the intermediate segment of aircraft and medium segment of aircraft. As you can see, fuel definitely, it would vary depending on hours. We've taken an average of 600 operating hours a year. But when you look at maintenance and you look at engines, that's significant. Right now, that is what you're sourcing from suppliers, from MRO facilities. What are your options? Potentially non-OEM, but certified, where the OEM allows that to happen. Instead of buying zero-hour components, where you're talking about 5,000 hours of life of an aircraft operating 50 hours a month, 600 hours a year, that'll take you 8 years to get to 5,000 hours. Why not buy a component with probably 30% life remaining? And that'll take you for the next 3 to 4 years. That is perfectly in line with your 5-year, 5,000-hour inspection, your 1,200-hour inspection, where the aircraft are going into maintenance and it's not going to cause additional downtime. You will pay a third the price of new. Consider the impact of doing that across the board. It's significant. Engines, everyone's concerned about engines, rightfully so. But if you do a large enough contract with OEMs directly, they will give you these specific options, potentially no buy-in, potentially no buy-up, potentially a preferred rate, or you come to an organization like us where we own about 25 PT60s and we go through the repair and overhaul concept, and it's much cheaper than the whole program. Part outs. Not many companies today have the ability to issue Form 1s or 8130s. What that means is you take an old aircraft, you power it up, you meet the protocols, now you take out the part, and you issue a Form 1. We can move a Form 1 part certified anywhere in the world. And the cost of Form 1 parts, typically, ranging on life remaining, can be 30 to 40% cheaper than what you would buy new. Lease. I certainly would suggest think about leasing as it pertains to components and part support programs. Today, most major leasing companies in the world, and we support, quite frankly, most of them, a lot of them send their aircraft to Eagle Copters for leaseback inspections, return to service options, and even storage. Today, most leasing companies, and understandably so, will require customers to go to the OEMs for a program. That costs a lot of money because it's the full program. But what about customized programs? What about depending on your operations, depending on your hours? Maybe we don't include on-condition items. Why are you paying for on-condition parts when the part might never fail for the time that you own it? You'll never get that money back. Think about scenarios that's going to challenge your suppliers to do more for you, because that can happen. Eagle does that. PBH flatlines the budget. Accountants are very happy with that, but PBH doesn't guarantee AOG uptime within a period of time. It depends if the part's available or not available. Most of the times it is, but the fact of the matter is, if you have a large enough fleet, talk about consignment. Why don't you have consignment components sitting in your facility by the supplier? So if something fails, you have the component right there, and they pull it out of the system, and only charge you and transact the dollars once you've used the component. We have seen potential impact from variable costs resulting in 20 to 40% of reduction in prices to our customers. It's significant. Now let's talk about fixed cost. Insurance is sky high. We all know that. It's impactful. But you can do other things in terms of your fixed cost. Today, there is a shortage of headcount, of specialized headcount, of good pilots, of good engineers, of good technical records people. When you're talking about running an NSOP operation, your focus is customer service, uptime, and experience, line maintenance. You don't need to necessarily invest in the tooling and capabilities and training when it comes to all of these skill sets. They're hard to find. Everybody wants them. It gets complicated. So perhaps move that over to an outsourced supplier while you focus on what you do best as an operator. When you do that, you won't need tooling to carry out heavy MRO, which is expensive and not easily available. When you do that, you will reduce your hangar footprint. You won't need to have additional hangar space because of the heavy MRO. When you do that, you won't necessarily need to invest in the camo and the tech records to the extent you do today. And when you do that, you will reduce your training cost. You put a number to all of those line items, it's in the tens of millions. Solutions on inventory reduction. Today, a lot of times you buy aircraft, and a lot of times, rightfully so, that has been done. You will get a list of components as critical stocks. Completely agree. Why do you want to buy more than critical stocks? Once that component passes its calendar check items and is sitting because it hasn't been used, you cannot use that component. You have to send it back for rebuild. So you bought this component for hundreds of thousands of dollars, and now you have to send it back for rebuild. It makes no sense. Our approach is Move that on to your supplier. If you do that, you will reduce your warehousing space, you will reduce your support staff to manage all of that, and you will increase your inventory turn rates. Another key piece right here is if you're not carrying the inventory to the extent of millions of dollars, your insurance costs also drop. So there are levers out here that you can work on to drive your cost factor down. That impact is 7 to 10%. So you add 20 to 30% to the 7 to 10%, it's a 30 to 40% reduction in life cost. Significant. Here is another example that I'd like to talk about. So 50% of the completions at Eagle result in about 7% reduction to 10% reduction in capital structure. We are in this deal right now. We have just won this deal. I can't speak to it. I got a call last night. But we took the aircraft from the OEM and we said, we will carry out the completions at our facility. We dropped the capital costs right away. Then we come up with a power by the hour scenario, and it's a 20% reduction year over year. At the end of the day, as part of our PBH programs, we also provide camo services, which we don't charge. Here's the outcome. This is the competitive model. This is in the medium segment. I'm not going to show the model out of respect to the OEMs. But when you look at the revenue and we put ourselves in the customer scenario, that is the cost structure. GM 31%, really good. EBITDA 19%, really good. Now, we are representing another model. If we went with only the OEM structure, our costs would be higher, our GM would be lower, and our EBITDA would be lower. With Eagle coming into the picture, we dropped the COGS because the completion dropped the cost, so our lease rates were lower. All right, that's what COGS going up to 37%. And then indirect costs dropped again significantly because of our PBH program. With that one shot, we were up to 37% in gross margin versus the competition, and EBITDA 25% to the customer. Basically, we switched the game around. We switched the game around so the OEM got the deal, the customer got a highly competitive price, and we were able to support them for the next 10 years. So bottom line is there's multiple synergies, and I'm just giving you examples here because there's a few things to think about. You are an operator, you should demand the best service. Our OEMs are extremely good at that, but our OEMs also got a ton to look at. They're highly stretched. We need support services to provide this sort of a gap fill that is hard to come by. So in short, what does it do? It allows for operators to focus on your core business. You focus on your flight operations. You focus on your customer experience. You give your customers the best feeling. They're not going to talk about the quality of the part you put in. They're not going to talk about the number of hours your component has. They don't care about that. They care about a safe operation with a great experience. When more operators in your region do that, and say you have one or two comprehensive one-stop shop MRO facilities, that now gives it what I call central mass. Central mass allows these service centers to invest in large quantities of inventory, AMEs, pilots, everything to support you. If I didn't have the volume of customers around the world, I'd be in trouble. Increased volume drives down cost. And preferably, they don't want to be an operator. So in short, it's a constant evolution, and I think there's a lot of impact and potential value to be had in your region of the Middle East and in other countries, other regions that are growing at the pace you're growing. So I'll finally bring this around full circle. World-class safety through your supplier, rebuilt and reused to like new scenarios, leasing operations with really competitive PBH solutions, aircraft completions that will drop your cost basis. Even if you want to own the aircraft, why not take it 7 to 10 to 15% discount? You buy 5 aircraft, that's a lot of money. Alternate but highly economical part solutions, engineering, design, certification, validation. You do all of that, you get to right where you need to be. The OEMs are happy because they get to push more aircraft out. They got dependable services to go after. Your operators are happy, your lessors are happy, and most important, the whole network of the helicopter margins is going to be where it needs to be. So with that, thank you for your time.